Hi, everybody. My name is Ember Kelly, and I am the Director of Religious Education at the Fourth Universalist Society in the city of New York. Always a big, long mouthful to get that all out at one time, but I can do it. Um, our religious education this fall has been centered around different aspects of being resilient in the face of all the challenges that we have this year. November's themes center around self-care, community care, thinking about both the habits that we do to take care of ourselves, but how community can help us take care of each other and how we can care for our communities. And with my mind thinking about community so much, I thought, who would be an absolutely amazing guest to have? And I thought our own Director of Hospitality and Membership, Soyal Smalls, would be a great person to come and reflect with me on this idea of community care and how we care for each other and how we care for ourselves in this challenging time, since hospitality is really a key part of that. So, Soyal, would you like to introduce yourself for everybody?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Soyal Smalls, and as Ember said, I'm the Director of Membership and Hospitality at Fourth Universalist Society in New York City. And just a little bit about my role here at Fourth U. I am the person who most people are going to see my face first. I welcome visitors and members to the congregation. When we were in person, I was at the front doors. I was, there when you entered the sanctuary. Now that we're on Zoom, like I am there to host a virtual coffee hour and spend time while people just kind of chat and catch up, and also give people a chance to reflect on the service. I also try my best to engage members and figure out what their interests are and try to connect them to the different activities or groups or events that they may be interested in. Maybe they didn't get an email, or maybe they want to be on a mailing list for a particular group, or want to know what's happening outside of service, and then I can kind of lead them to the person that's leading the activity, or where to connect virtually. And then also I stay connected with those people who are friends or visitors, if they're interested in membership, or what that process is like, or what's the difference between being someone who's coming to church every single Sunday and participating in activities and feeling like really involved. What's the difference between that person and a member, right? Because some people are like, oh, I'm a member and I've been coming for like 3 years, and but there are certain things that are a little bit different about just coming to Fourth U and participating and membership. So I help kind of clarify the little gray lines with that as well. So
So really big on making connections and
yeah.
building those networks inside of our congregational community. So could you tell us a little bit about like your life journey that's brought you to Fourth Universalist?
Sure. So to try to keep it concise, I gave myself a little notes so that I don't give you every detail about my life. But I grew up in a Unitarian Universalist congregation in Poughkeepsie. And my mom brought me there when I was 3 years old. So I grew up in their RE program and went through their coming of age program. I participated in a program that was called Our Whole Lives, which is a sex education program when I was a teenager. And then, after that, and I transitioned, there was like a bridging ceremony where you transition into young adults hood. So during that time, there wasn't actually like any activities that were happening for young adults because everybody's kind of going off to college. So during my 20s, I explored different ministries, UU ministries, programs, general assemblies, just various, I guess you would call them either like summits or workshops, or, weekend getaways where we could grow in our understanding of Unitarian Universalists, particularly in areas that focused around people of color and their experience being UUs in UU congregations. Also, um, talking with other young adults and our transient experience in the UU community, and how we're kind of in places for a short period of time, and then we come back, or we're kind of exploring but not settled. And then also I was exploring LGBTQ ministries within the UU community. So then in more like recent times, I've started thinking about environmental work and environmental justice. So that's something that I'm growing into right now. Um, and so I want to be able to figure out how my UU values can make a positive impact in our environment. And so I think that, sometimes all of these things, like they intersect and they overlap. And so that's kind of like the background that I'm coming with. Um, Finding Fourth U was really in like a really big step for me in terms of self-care and finding a position within the Unitarian Universalist community. I was very specifically looking for a job within the Unitarian Universalist community, whether it was like in a church or whether it was like in the broader sense, could have been working for a magazine or working for like general. I just wanted to be in amongst other Unitarian Universalists because I had been working in environments that were emotionally toxic for me, spiritually toxic. They were draining. I wasn't happy. And I found philosophies very challenging sometimes. It was hard for me to engage in certain conversations. And it made it like I didn't want to get up and go to work, and I didn't want that to be my future all the time. So I deliberately went out of my way to find a job within a community that shared my values, and I'm really happy that I did that. So I'm very happy in this position and in this community, and I love my coworkers and I love the members here, and that's kind of like the short version of how I ended up with Fourth Universalist Society.
One of the things with various guests, whether in these in conversations or in these podcasts, has been thinking about like how communities really do shape our journeys, like the different groups that we come in contact, or the how they shape our journey. It's really powerful, the way that interacting with other people can shape our own journeys. So in your mind, what does it mean to build a good community? What does that look like in maybe a little bit in practice?
So whenever I think of the word build, I'm always imagining like that you start with a foundation, right? And you need a good, solid, strong, reliable foundation that you can, add to and create and grow from. And so I I thought, how do we create that foundation, like socially? How do we create that network to begin with when you're starting? And I'm trying to, reflect on times when I was exploring different communities and congregations. I didn't know anyone and I'm new, and I want to start making those connections. So how do I create that social emotional foundation? And I thought that in the different places that I've been, it was really helpful for me to make connections with at least three people within the community that I'm at. And I say three people because everyone is, they have their lives, their schedules, and sometimes you could. So a personal example, there was a church that I was going to, and there was one person that they were the reason why I went to that church. They introduced me to the church, and I knew them outside, and I would go and I would see them, and I felt comfortable. But then there was a day that they didn't show up, and I was alone in this church, and there was no one there for me to connect with. And all of a sudden I felt nervous and uncomfortable, and I didn't feel safe in the community anymore because that one person that helped me feel connected wasn't there. And so over time, I realized, okay, maybe I need to have two people or three people. And I think that, really having like at least three people that you can feel connected to and talk to and reach out to, just in case they're not there on any given day or at any particular event, you don't feel so alone. And then you can expand from those three people because they're going to introduce you to their family, their friends, right? And then they'll slowly pull you in and bring you to different areas where you can either show off your talents, or just be introduced to different experiences. So that's my idea of creating a social emotional foundation. See if you can connect to at least 3 people in your community. And part of my job is to help make those connections possible. Yeah.
See, now you got me thinking about who were the first 3 people that I talked to when I came and started at this position this summer.
Like me.
I want to say it was probably you and Skylar were definitely up there. Yeah. But it's true. It helps to make those first few connections, and then they can help you make more connections and get to know the broader community. I think that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of me and starting in the midst of the pandemic, I think I can imagine that it's been challenging for you trying to handle hospitality and community building in this all digital setting. So, like, what kind of challenges and maybe also blessings have you seen, like, while you've been building community during all of the year that is 2020?
Sure. So, what else? I'll kind of like preface this with a little insight about myself. So right before I got this position, I just graduated with my master's degree in public administration, and my final project, my thesis, like the presentation I gave after having learned all of this knowledge, right, was how to use technology within religious communities, right? So this is before Zoom, and I'm talking about the concept of Zoom, right? And the concept of like, okay, how do we use so we have the digital giving, right? You can give online with texting or with through the internet, right? We're talking through this we're talking through Facebook, or we're talking through various video chats, right? And I was like, okay, we kind of do that, but how do we like really take advantage of that? Because what I was noticing in my home congregation was that for various reasons, people were having trouble making it to meetings. So they were either too far away, they couldn't drive at night because they were having trouble seeing, they were having like childcare issues, right? And so when COVID happened, I was like, this is like really an opportunity for me to practice what I had been studying, and see what I was able to create in reality. So it's like one thing to like, intellectualize it and write it down on paper and create this great story, but it's another thing to like take it off the page and put it into reality. So I would say that like the blessing of COVID was like, hey, now you get to actually like do the work that you were envisioning, right? The challenge is the same thing. It's actually creating that reality. And people have aversions to technology. They don't want to learn things that are new. Having people feel gain a comfort and gain a sense of mastery over this new information. So I'm teaching my dad how to do stuff on the phone. Tonight he called me on video chat. That's amazing. I'm like, I've been teaching this to you for like over a year and you're finally video chatting me. Yes. So having to be patient with people. So in the beginning, we're doing the Zoom. I'm excited, I'm nervous, but we're also, losing some of our members, and not losing them like in the sense that they don't want to be a part of Fourth Universalist anymore, but like, they're hesitant to be in this virtual space, or they don't want their children in the virtual space, right? And so how do I continue to have a relationship with them when before our relationship was very much reliant on in-person interaction? And so that has been something that I'm trying to figure out how to overcome any restrictions that people may have with the technology that we're using. Because while we're attracting a lot of new people, and while there's also people who are able to adapt, there are some people who are feeling left out. And one of the things that I did was definitely made a lot of phone calls over the summer, a lot more than I usually did. just to let people know that, hey, you're still part of the community, and what can I do to support you, and how can I bring you back in to engage with us. And then just be patient, just be patient with the change process. So some of the activities, I've tried a few different activities just to see how people respond to them. Everything's an experiment right now, and that's fun. That's fun and exciting. It's challenging too. So you and I earlier were talking about what's the best time to do things. That's probably one of the biggest challenges is time. Because time was a little bit more structured before. You knew when most people were in work, you knew when most people were having dinner, but now it's a little bit all over the place. So trying to find a good time to do things where people will want to engage. And then also, one of the challenges, again, for me making these connections, one of the places that I made the most connections with people was during coffee hour, like actual, like in the building coffee hour. I had my, like, the volunteers, whether they were members or people who are starting to get more familiar with the community, our friends, right? I loved when they would host coffee hour with me, because I would have like all this time before service and like after service to like get to know people, have these conversations, make jokes in the back, get to know new food. Some people were really great cooks, some people knew really cool restaurants that I needed to explore in the city. And I love that. I love that time, and I don't have that now. And how do I recreate that energy of bonding? So that's kind of like that's like a real challenge for me. How do I recreate those bonding moments, shopping together for food? I don't live in the city, so it's a little bit more challenging because I'm not there on Sundays now to connect in that way. But another blessing is that now there are people from different countries that are coming on, and I'm talking with them at different times. So while my program times may not be convenient for some people, because of work, they are convenient for people that live in different time zones. So it's it's a huge balancing act right now. It's huge. Um, it's exciting. I don't know. I'm excited. I'm frustrated some days, but I'm more excited about it.
Right, definitely. I feel that. I know just recently, after reading another like a clergy friend's post, I was like, oh, maybe I should start putting like Eastern Standard Time on like my advertisements, because
Right?
we just don't know what time zones people are in when they're coming at us, and people are moving in the midst of all this, but they're still staying at their previous congregations. It just is changing a lot of dynamics that would have previously existed for sure. Um, so in the midst of the upheaval that is 2020, how do you think that being in community that we can help care for each other better?
I think I love like whenever I ask like reflective questions during coffee hour, I love the responses that our congregation gives. Like, just to know how caring and attentive so many of the members are. So for for me being so far away, if somebody's coming up to my, like if I hear that somebody's coming up to the Hudson Valley, I'm like, hey, like can we meet, can we get together? Like I just want to like let you know, like, hi, I'm here, like I want to connect, right? And I'm excited that you're coming into my region, and like let's do something while you're up here, and even if it's just for a second or just a phone call or whatever, I just want to let you know, hi, right? And to see that people are reaching out to each other in a similar manner, like, oh, you live like only like a subway stop away from my apartment. Oh, like we can go ride bikes, and I know a great trail over here, we can go ride bikes and it'll be safe, or we can go for a walk. Oh, I know this like great outdoor eating spot, or we can go picnicking here, and just to see how people are learning the how close in proximity we are to each other as we're traveling around, and being available, right? And sometimes, like for some of our older congregants that are not getting out much, um for any number of reasons, just hearing that people are like, oh, I want to go visit them, I'm gonna try to bring them some food or some groceries so they don't have to leave their apartment, or like wherever their housing is. I'm gonna just make sure that someone is there, and getting their needs met. And then there, and just phone calls, or sending letters. So I know that some people just like getting mail, right? That's like I think that that's one of the things that I had my daughter do. She's 3.5. And then she likes drawing, and I don't know if people I don't know how people reacted to it, but we were like, cutting out like little hearts and shapes, and just like adding glitter, and just trying to make like this abstract image on a card, right? And then I would add like a little poem or saying or something positive on the card. And I put it in an envelope, and I sent it to one of our older members in the community who knew me growing up. And it was just a chance for me to share a little bit about my daughter, a little bit about me, and then they could get something in the mail, and then it was like a surprise. And whether they appreciated child's art or whether they appreciated my poetry, it was just like a nice surprise in the mail that day. And oh, like one of our members is still like thinking about me, and took that time to do that, right? So those little things that make a difference. um
I mainly have
they're
to
all
rely on
helpful, they're all great.
I mainly have to rely on the excitement of Amazon deliveries.
Yeah.
Not quite as exciting.
Right.
And it doesn't seem that New Jersey doesn't seem to attract as many people for like day vacations as the Hudson Valley does. So I don't get as many people coming over my
They're
way.
like, no, let's not go to Jersey. No, I'll come visit you in Jersey.
Okay, there we go. We'll make a plan.
Yeah.
Um, so in community, I think one of the challenges that can often be there is listening well to each other and supporting each other, which is really vital to like a good community. So, what are some ways that you think that how do we do this? How do we listen and support each other better?
Yeah, listening is really hard. Just put it out there. Listening is really hard. It was something that I had to learn how to do. I still talk a lot. I write a lot. But it is a practice. It is an exercise. And many of us have a lot going on in our heads. And just taking that time to just kind of wait and not immediately like respond or react, right? Sometimes it's just like, just let whatever you heard just sit there for a second, you know, um, and maybe just check in with how you're feeling or what you're thinking, because maybe it's impacting how you're hearing the message, right? How you're receiving the message. Some of us are more articulate than others. Some of us have, barriers to communication, may use words that they don't mean to use, right? So language is very tricky, right? And so we just, it's, I'm often told like, when we're listening, like, just listen for intent and compassion, and hope that when people are speaking, they're not speaking to intentionally hurt or cause harm. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't instances where people do, because we know that people definitely say things to hurt and to cause harm. But most of the time in this community, I feel that when people are speaking, they're speaking from their own experience and their perspective, and they're sharing something about their journey. They're sharing something about, how their world has impacted them. And it's not a direct attack on anyone. It's just a reflection of themselves. So if we're able to take that time to just hold ourselves, and it'll be easier, and like really listen for what's the underlying intent or message that the person is trying to convey, even if some of the words upset us a little bit. Because UUs get upset about words. We don't we're finicky about words. So
What is that? I may be new to the UU world, but I want to say, what's the joke that UUs are always reading ahead to the next line in the song to make sure they agree
yes,
with it before they sing it.
yes.
Yeah, but I mean, our culture just doesn't often value listening. Like I've mentioned in some other discussions with folks that um, it's problem solution and like that's it. Like
Mhm.
we don't want to listen, and we need that listening for like creating community. Yeah, we can help others in our community, like if there is a way that we can offer a solution, but like sometimes people just need someone to talk to.
Mhm.
And of course, when you were talking about the language we use, that made me think about like, so when I started here, coming from maybe a more like, I grew up very evangelical Christian, and then was in like the UCC, which is a bit more like liberal
Mhm.
religious, but still kind of Christian. And then now being in the UU, where we have people from such diverse perspectives just in our own community, like trying to think about my word choice has been part of
Mhm.
something that I've been trying to really work on to better support others by using words that make sense for their experience, like maybe switching to congregation instead of church, or
Mhm. Oh
uh,
yeah, it's that's a great one.
right, or do I call it a sermon, do I call it a message, do I call it a
Right.
reflection? Where I was talking about that one with Skylar today. um so yeah, it's I think that you can tell the intent, but it is also always really good for us to be listening to each other so that we understand like what language makes sense to use for the
Mhm.
other person. I think that's some really great insight you had. So a hospitality question here.
Ah.
Um, so how do we practice hospitality as a community, and specifically thinking about like new members, but also hospitality overall? Like how do we be more hospitable as a congregation?
Yeah, so that is a topic that comes up often, particularly in UU communities. So when before I even came into this role, hospitality was like, how do we help people feel welcome? How do we help people feel engaged? And it came up a lot in conversations at my home congregation, and then when I went to General Assembly, and taking these different workshops, everyone kind of had like this like similar concern. Like there was like this like sense of like in group, like everybody that was already a member, they were all talking to each other and doing their own thing, and anybody that was coming in, they were like in the background. There's like the fishbowl effect, right? Like you're sitting there on the outside watching everything happening on the inside, but you couldn't figure out how to like get in, right? And so that's part of hospitality, right? So how do we still engage with each other because we know each other and we're comfortable, but also feel comfortable um, with that awkward moment of reaching out to somebody new and saying hi. Just start with saying hello to somebody. So what I do at home, I walk around my development. I don't know everybody. I might know like a couple of people, but there's like 100 houses, and I wave to every single person and I smile. Do I get a smile or wave back every time? No. But I do it. And what I love is that after a while, that kind of becomes the culture of our neighborhood, right? So most people wave, and until they realize like, oh, this is a waving, like, oh, okay, this is the block where everybody waves, oh, okay, oh, hey, and that becomes the culture, right? But if the first person doesn't wave and smile, then you don't break into this new habit of welcoming. So I when we were meeting in person, it was just like, really important that I had some people volunteering and helping me out, just welcoming and greeting. It's hard to greet so many people by myself coming in. I might miss somebody, and I just wanted to make sure that there was always somebody at least smiling or waving or just at least saying hi, welcome, hello, just so that they're acknowledged, like, hi, I see you, you're acknowledged today, welcome, right? And that's simple, that's something simple that everyone everyone can do. Now, how do you translate that into like a virtual space, right? How do you translate that? So so right now, one of the things that I do virtually is I just encourage people to introduce themselves. And so some folks they've jumped in and they are saying hi to people, right? So whether I don't have to prompt them, right? So they're going out of their way and saying hi, good morning, great to see you, so glad to hear about your birthday, and then they're having like these little conversations in the chat when the chat is available, like when the chat is open, right? And I'm excited to see that and see people responding to people's posts, and that shows community and excitement and hospitality. Another thing that we do virtually during our coffee hour and our breakout groups, some things that I see that I think is great hospitality practice is, you can, sometimes you're in a group with a bunch of people that everybody knows each other and everyone's excited and they're all chatting with each other. And then sometimes there might be one person that's new, doesn't know anyone. So in the beginning, everyone's like, "Oh, hey, Sue, and hey, Bob, and like, how's your son, and how's your mom, and blah, blah, blah," right? There's all that, and then somebody is like, "Oh, um, let's just take a break for a second. Hi, such and such. How are you doing?" Right? So sometimes I'll jump in if that's the group that I'm in, and just make sure that I acknowledge someone who may be new on the call and make sure they have a chance to talk if they want to. But seeing other members do that too, and just chiming in and saying, "Oh, did you want to say anything? Did you want to share?" And giving that space, right? So it's kind of like when there's uh, those exercises where you put up the um you put up your rules or your covenant or whatever you call it, and then how to create like a safe space. And then one of those things is, if you are someone who is comfortable speaking, an extrovert, and you share a lot, maybe you want to practice stepping back and giving somebody else the space to talk, right? And then if you're not someone who talks often, right, maybe you want to try stepping up, right, and sharing, right? So just kind of change roles a little bit. So I think that when members recognize space sharing and do that, that's hospitality, right? And then people feel like they're not looking at the fishbowl anymore, right? It's the fishbowl, the barriers are coming down and they're invited to jump and join in the ocean. So I think those are some great ways virtually, and easy ways to practice hospitality.
Right. Well, first, I got to say, impressive on challenging the very well, what would be a nice way to put it? I don't want to call it grumpy, stoic, the very reserved New York metro area way of not acknowledging others on the street. So good.
That was a huge challenge for me. Oh man, I was like, I'm a suburban girl. Oh man, I forgot I was in the city. Nobody saying hi to anybody.
Right. Yeah. No. Coming from the Midwest, definitely. I'm much more used to acknowledging other people's existence. So it's different here sometimes. So good work on the waving. But as you were talking about that, and we were talking about what does hospitable look like in digital settings. I mean, and you and I were actually talking about this before we launched. Is a lot of churches, they're worried about Zoom bombings, they're worried about security, worried about different issues, and so in the response to that, they then they only send out their Zoom link to just their member list, or there's various ways that they take these measures. Whereas our congregation has said, yes, we're very vigilant about these security threats, but we want to make sure that anybody who stumbles across our church can find this link easily, can come join us very easily, that it's not you have to submit a 5-point application to come join the service. Or even with this, that, we'll get some meta here and say, we're streaming this live on Facebook because we want to make it accessible
Right.
and open to other people, or posting it on YouTube. Hey, everybody on YouTube in the future. um, uh, but it's about accessibility and getting it out there to everybody in whatever way we can, versus trying to keep it self-contained. I think that makes it much more hospitable.
I think so too. I think so too. And part of my job is, I think that when people do come on, kind of me and other staff, right, just assessing, what their intent is, right. I don't like one of the things I was saying to Reverend Schuyler is that, if there's someone that's coming in and they're feeling particularly challenged in a way, I don't want like the whole congregation in, like, let's say in coffee hour, right, to feel that they are responsible for managing someone's outbursts, right. That didn't happen, but like, let's say, like, we have a Zoom bomber and they're, having, they're doing some disruptive stuff, right? So part of my job is to contain that,
Right.
so that the rest of the congregation can experience their time in service, and then I can try to more focus, like, spend my energy kind of focusing on what's going on with this
Mm-hmm.
person, if they need the attention, or just saying, this is not the space for you, we need you to leave, right. And that's not a burden that we're putting on our congregants.
Definitely, I think that makes sense. So, as kind of a final directions, we've talked a lot about community and a good bit about care. What are some ways that you practice self-care for yourself? How do you take care of yourself in the midst of all this?
Yeah, no, that's awesome, right? Because if I wasn't caring for myself, right, then I don't know how good of a job I'd be doing. So some of the things that I do, like what I've been doing, like over the summer, I was doing a lot of gardening. Like I was out in my garden, and just like, growing things, growing my own food, like just really like connecting like with the planet, and just like, seeing like where my food came from. Not all of my food was successful, but just like having that relationship, and that was great, right. I loved being able to do that. Now I am engaging in cooking more. I'm a creative person, all right. I have a creative spirit, a creative energy. So if there are like whatever ways that I can be creative, like I'm feeding myself and I'm rejuvenating myself, because it takes energy. I'm constantly using energy throughout the day to do various things, but one thing that revitalizes me is the act of creation and creativity. So if I'm not gardening, if I'm not baking something, I'm doing like little projects with my daughter. So that we got all these like half done art projects all over the place. I might be redecorating my space. I might be moving things around. Sometimes I just sit still, and I'll read a book, right. So sometimes you're just having like one of those days where everything's flying around and it's just like super intense and you're overwhelmed and it's just this like overstimulated and you just need that quiet time, right. So giving yourself that quiet time, whether that means no lights, no sound, right? Like or like, maybe it's a sound bath, right? I have chimes. I have chimes outside my house. Sometimes I just turn the lights out, lie down, and just listen to the chimes, right? So whatever it is that you're kind of feeling like a deficit in, and if you're aware of yourself. So sometimes people don't really know what's going on with them, and eventually like they may be able to find out the best ways to help themselves. But these are the things that I've learned how to do for me particularly, right. And so I have my chimes. I love those. And I love listening to music. So sometimes I'll pick certain songs and just play those and dance. And anything that allows me to be in a creative space. I remember I was talking about self-care and somebody was looking at me funny when I said, why don't you like chop down the branches of the trees outside your house? And they were like, how is that self-care? And it's like, you're taking care of your physical environment. So, if there are trees that are overgrown, right, they could be damaging later, but you want to take care of your environment. And also it's physical exercise. So maybe this is a chance, if you're feeling angry or frustrated, take it out on some tree branches, right? So like like different ways to care for different aspects of what's going on with your being. Yeah.
Yeah, solid tree advice there.
Yeah.
People are making good money now running, these places where people can come just to break things. So,
Right,
there's
exactly. Smash some like, clay pots and like, and that's it's cathartic.
it's a secondary career goal for
Yeah.
myself. Um, so now is the time that we're gonna say goodbye to our Facebook viewers as well as our YouTube viewers, and just move into our Zoom open-ended question times. If you are on Facebook, if you are on YouTube, watching this now, watching this later, feel free to leave a question. We'll kind of keep an eye in the future and see if we see any comments. So we do enjoy hearing from you on Facebook and YouTube. So.